The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday, December 29th. We're slowly ticking away in the last few days of 2024, almost there. So thank you for joining me for a Sunday show, trying to make up for the fact that we didn't have a show on Friday. So I've got two topics for today. We'll see how long we go, and of course, anything you guys want to talk about, happy to talk about it. The way to get my attention about a topic is to put it into a super chat, ask a question, make a comment, suggest a topic that we can talk about right now. All of that is good. So feel free to do that. I'm going to talk about this MAGA civil war in a minute, but I'm not going to really talk about the issue of immigration. That is going to be covered tomorrow. So tomorrow, 6 p.m. East Coast time. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. East Coast time, an entire show dedicated to just immigration. We'll break it down. We'll take all the objections to immigration. I'll provide some answers to it. I don't know if we can cover every single aspect of the immigration debate in one show. We will see, but it will be there. But we will try tomorrow. It'll be probably a pretty long show, so come prepared. But more importantly, come prepared with all your immigration objections, questions, challenges. What about Europe? What about mass immigration? What about this? What about that? Feel free to put that in or add that again to the super chat tomorrow, so that we can cover everything. So that'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow, the entire show, just immigration, right? Just immigration, and then of course on Tuesday, it'll be New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve, we will be doing a show starting at 1 p.m. East Coast time, same as today. It'll be a long show, as long as it takes. We'll see how long we go. It'll be a fundraising show, so I will do as I always do, kind of an overview of 2024. I'll have a bunch of things to say about 2024, what happened. Maybe we'll get to looking ahead to 2025, maybe not. Last year, I don't think we got to that. And I'll answer super chat questions, and we will raise money. We will raise money for the Yaron Brook Show, and we have a goal of $15,000. But, however, since I've already gotten $2,100 over PayPal, specifically targeted for the fundraiser on December 31st, what we need to do live as of now, I might still get more money over PayPal in the next day and a half, but in the next couple of days. But we'll go for, what is it, $12,900, given that we've already raised $2,100. So if you would like to make a contribution by PayPal, just add a comment that it is for the December 31st fundraiser. One advantage PayPal has is you're not constrained by the super chat limit of $500. You can do more than $500. You can do $1,000. You can do $10,000. You can do however much you want on PayPal. So feel free to go wild to show massive love and support by putting a big number there. But yes, so anything we raise on PayPal will trim back the goal for the super chat. Although, if it turns out that it's really easy to get to the 15,000, we might just raise the goal to 20,000. More is better. I'm a big believer in generally that in life, more good things, more values are better. So we'll work off of that premise. So thank you. to those of you who've already provided support. And again, anybody who wants to just go PayPal and search for the Yaron Brook Show, and you can do a one-time gift day. I think you might be able to do a one-time gift on Patreon as well. So those of you more comfortable on Patreon, you can probably do a one-time thing on Patreon as well. So feel free to do that. All right. So that'll be on the 31st. The 1st, we will not have a show, and then we'll get back to normal on Thursday, Friday. We'll have a show on Saturday on healthcare. And then the following week, I'm traveling, so there'll be fewer shows. There'll be some shows, but fewer shows. All right. So one topic we're going to talk about is the MAGA Civil War. We'll talk about that. I'll give you the kind of the how that started and how it evolved a little bit, although it went in all kinds of directions. We will also talk about a pretty humorous. What is this actually called? It's an amicus curiae, if I'm pronouncing that right. This is the Trump's submission to the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to basically give him the ability to decide whether the TikTok, the law that basically says that TikTok has to either sell or shut down by, I think, January 20th. It has to, that law is in front of Congress, in front of the Supreme Court, in terms of its whether it abides by the Constitution, particularly in terms of free speech. Donald Trump is saying, don't make a decision, give it to me, I'll make the decision. Don't worry about it. I got this, and it's very humorous, the way he writes, the things he writes. So I'm going to read you bits of the amicus brief, amicus curiae, and we'll talk about that. I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I don't know if this has any merit, but it's just fun to. You'll enjoy this. It'll be super funny. All right, let's see. Let's see. All right. So let's start again on with regard to MAGA Civil War. This has been going on, although it's quieting down today. Like Elon Musk is kind of taking himself out of it. Vivek has been silent for a while. They've taken themselves out of this. I think they got instructions from the boss to quieten this down. Trump came down with his views on this, and MAGA is still upset and still talking about it, but it certainly is not getting the kind of volume that it did a little while, as of even yesterday. But this all started a few days ago. I just saw a tweet by Elon Musk that I thought was kind of funny. So Elon, just a few minutes ago. No, not that. What the hell? Let's see. Here it is. 56 minutes ago. He says, please post a bit more positive, beautiful, or informative content on this platform. So, people have been complaining forever about the negativity and the fighting and the, bad kind of negative vibe on Twitter forever. But Elon Musk has finally noticed, because he was in the middle of it. He was being attacked viciously by MAGA, and now it's like, yeah, maybe we should try to be more positive. Maybe we should be a little nice, informative, and more beautiful stuff. He is. That was his post 56 minutes ago. So that is. That is Elon Musk's, I think, conclusion from the whole thing. All right, everything started a few days ago when Donald Trump appointed Siram Krishnan as a advisor for AI, serving under the AI czar, whose name just escaped me. But serving under the airways, Sriram Krishnan. Laura Luna, I think, was maybe the first, but there were a number of MAGA comments that came out saying, more, we don't need these Indians. Why are we bringing, these foreigners into the administration? We were supposed to be an America First administration. And what's going on here? MAGA's being played. Vivek and Elon are bringing in these foreigners, and they're getting these senior positions in the Trump administration. Something's very wrong here, unacceptable. We need to do something about it. And MAGA just jumped on the whole thing as part of this. Elon Musk, later said stuff about, we actually need more people like Krishnan. We need more people like Krishnan. We need more H-1Bs. We need more people to come here from these countries. And then all hell broke loose. Basically, the racists and the zero-sum world, DEI for Americans, the whole thing just exploded. And MAGA just freaked out, completely flipped out on Elon Musk and the whole thing. Then Vivek responded with a long post about American culture. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then he was attacked, and it went, and then it just got, other tech guys came in trying to defend the H-1B system or trying to recalibrate the discussion about H-1B. But the MAGA people were like either making racist comments or zero-sum kind of Marxist comments about employment, about wages, about the damage immigrants do. And again, this has been going on. It's still going on in certain parts of Twitter, but this dominated Twitter for a while. But as I said, it started with Sriram Krishnan. And if you've ever seen a photo of Sriram Krishnan, he's not a pretty guy. I mean, he is, and I don't think this is because this has nothing to do with his ethnic background or where he comes from. He's just not got a pretty face. He's got a pretty ugly face. And immediately pictures went up on Twitter of people saying, we don't want people like this in this country. And of course they were making a strong racist claim, and it went all over the place. And it's interesting to note who this guy is. I mean, it's a fascinating. His story is a fascinating greatness of America story. I mean, we talked about Horatio Alger. We talked about Horatio Alger, I think, yesterday. Adam recommended everybody read Horatio Alger. Well, here is Horatio. This is a Horatio Alger story. Sriram Krishnan was born in Chennai, India, to a relatively or quite poor family. Family couldn't afford a computer until he was 17. When he got one, it was because his father was willing to spend what was equivalent to a year's worth of salary in order to buy him one. So when he was 17, he basically taught himself to code. And started coding for himself and creating products and creating stuff online. And he wrote about this in one of his blog posts where he wrote about some of the stuff he was developing online, caught the eye of a Microsoft executive who was visiting India. And Sriram was invited to come and demo his work. He's flown out to a conference in India. First time in a hotel, first time in a plane, and he presented, and Microsoft hired him on the spot. Hired him on the spot in India. A few years later, he was moved to Seattle, where he worked on a team that put together, that basically created Azure, which is the, what is it, the cloud computing? I think it's the cloud computing of Microsoft, a business worth hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So he worked at Microsoft for several years. Again, cloud computing, and was considered one of the really rising stars. He worked, directly under a guy named Dave Cutler, who's a tech legend and who basically built Windows NT. So Azure is AWS, which is AWS is the Amazon version, right? So after working in Seattle for Microsoft, he left and moved to Silicon Valley. At Silicon Valley, he worked at Facebook, where he scaled global ad systems under Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg. He then went to work at Twitter, where he worked directly for Jack Dorsey. He worked at Snap. So here's a guy who has worked at many of the major, certainly social media companies, but all kinds of tech, all kinds of areas where he has excelled. In every one of those jobs, he excelled. He's brought in to do like a special mission, special project, and then he leaves and goes to the next challenge. Finally, during COVID, I think he left these companies and became a general partner, not just a junior partner, a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, one of the top, most influential venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, where he basically works with founders to help build the next wave of tech, the next generation of great innovation and great products. At some point here, I don't know what year it was, he was actually tapped by Andreessen Horowitz to move to London to start their European operations. And I guess about a month ago, before he was tapped by Trump to come into the administration, he basically announced that he was leaving Andreessen Horowitz, and not clear what he was going to do. But then Mark Andreessen obviously has some input into the transition team at Trump on the tech side, and he probably is the guy who gave a good word, and they hired him. So here's a guy who came from India, and he didn't come on an H-1B, he came on some other visa, which is a relocation visa from Microsoft relocating somebody from a foreign country to locally. Very hard to get those visas. He has created massive amounts of value. Went through the process of getting a green card, became a naturalized citizen of the United States along the way. I don't know exactly what year he became a naturalized citizen. And has been incredibly productive, creating real value. I don't know that you can measure how many jobs he's created, how much dollars he's created, but enormous, right? And he's being tapped to advise on AI. Now, I am skeptical about the government having a czar for crypto and AI and what that means. And I worry about the fact that I think these Silicon Valley guys who are involved with the Trump administration think that they don't object to central planning. They just think they could do the central planning better. And I worry about government having AI and crypto policies and what that means. Let the market rip and let's see where AI and crypto lead us. I worry also about, I think there are all kinds of misaligned incentives by having these tech guys heavily involved in government, but overall, they're probably more rational voices than the other people surrounding Trump, so go for it. But here's a guy, he's a massive success and brilliant, value creator, wealth creator, jobs creator. And what does MAGA care about? That he's not American, he's not white, he kind of looks ugly, he doesn't look like them, I mean, and they will complain that he's taking an American's job, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely, given how smart this guy really is. Other smart Americans, as smart as he is, all have jobs. All have jobs equivalent to his. So, that's how it started. With an American success story. With an Horatio Alger success story. And the people who supposedly want to save America, make America great again, which to me means more Horatio Alger stories, are the ones complaining about him. Complaining about what's he doing in America? Why is he so successful in America? And why would Trump put such a person in such a position? So, as I said, all hell broke loose. MAGA went all out, crazy racist and crazy zero-sum kind of Marxist. And I think those are the two groups that basically, were in this, right? The two groups that basically were represented here is the people who argued that bringing in H-1B visas destroys American jobs. They outcompete Americans, or they lower wages, although this is, CRMs is a good example where that is clearly not the case. Or they're just outright DEI racist. We need quotas for white people. We need to make sure white Americans who go to school have good paying jobs. So just the flip side of DEI, the mirror image of DEI, just from the perspective of, white Americans. And it's not just white Americans. I also saw comments of, like, Steve Bannon says something like, we shouldn't allow any immigrants into the United States until, no more H-1Bs until Silicon Valley is 20% black and 20% Hispanic. He is appealing now to blacks and Hispanics because they voted for Trump, so we got to appeal to them, right? So he's expanding beyond whites, but you have to be American, whatever American means. And we have to have quotas, and we have to have standards. I mean, what is the difference again? Remind me of the difference between MAGA and the woke left. There's a reason why over the last 2-3 months, the idea pushed by James Lindsay and what's his name in the UK, Kissen, these guys are pitching the concept of woke right? Because they seem to advocate for the same things, just with a different spin on them. It's like flip images. And it's what I told you would happen. Remember I told you what would happen? I said the more the left goes wacky, the more they go identitarian, the more the right will go, oh, you want to play that identitarian game? We can do that, and we're bigger than you. Oh, that's exactly what's happened. Exactly what happened. All right, so then Vivek stepped in, and he said, look, basically, he said, we need immigrants because they're just better than local Americans. And this, of course, really flipped people out. Here's what he writes, and so this is his statement on Twitter. The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over native, in quotation marks, Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation, he says. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. And if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. And now he goes to a whole, critique of American culture. Quote, our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college. It starts young. Now, people are flipping out over all this. Now, isn't this like the typical conservative critique of America? Isn't this like standard pretty much on it used to be on, quote, the right, what used to be the right, critiquing American education, critiquing American culture. Can't take it from Vivek, though. He continues, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ, or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. Now, I don't know any of those characters. I didn't watch any of those shows, so you'll have to forgive me for that one. He then puts in parentheses, fact, I know multiple set of immigrant parents in the 90s who actually limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity. And their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends. Now, let's just put that aside for a second. I want to say something about Whiplash because this one became a whole stream of criticism saying, Vivek, you didn't understand Whiplash, which was unbelievably revealing. All these people think that Whiplash was about the dangers of, I don't know, pushing, of over-pushing, of insisting on perfection, of insisting on more and more and more practice, on more and more and more to gain excellent and brilliant, that it was a critique of that. Now, that tells you a lot about their philosophy. That tells you a lot about how they think about the world. That tells you a lot about their veneration of mediocrity, that they took Whiplash as a movie that encourages mediocrity, that discourages what actually happened there, which was a teacher pushing a student, maybe brutally, maybe overly brutally, but pushing a student to becoming brilliant and excellent at what he does, a drummer in this case. And the proof that that's what the movie in the end is about is the ending of the movie, where the student finally, partially out of anger, but partially because of all the practice and the pushing and the expectations and the demands, finally lives up to his potential, performs brilliantly. This is a movie about excellence, about pushing for excellence, striving for excellence, and the effort, the struggle, the pain, no pain, no gain, that is required in order to achieve that excellence. And the very fact that so many people commenting on this didn't get the point of the movie is stunning and says a lot about American culture. The fact that they will find mediocrity even where, or a rejection of excellence, even where it's so explicitly, unequivocally presented. Of course, the abuse worked. He can't find his way to excellence without the abuse. It's the abuse that got him to the point where he can find that excellence. And it's only when confronted with the anger with his teacher that he can manifest that greatness. I mean, you could argue that it's not a good theme, and that's fine, but that's the theme. Without the abuse, he's never this good. He's practiced enough. All that practice is now, internalized, and he's put in a position where he basically unleashes through anger everything that he's practiced, everything that he's learned, all that this teacher has tried to drill into him, including that abuse, and now it manifests itself in his performance. He can't do that without all the practice that he's gone through. and without the demand for perfection, the demand for excellence, he doesn't achieve any of that. It's not that it was all there, and his teacher prevents it from coming through because of the abuse. No, the teacher, drives him, and it's only after that drive is completely internalized into him. It's only when he comes to terms with that, and then only when he now faces, humiliation and real anger, that it comes forward. Anyway, more movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends. I never watched Friends. More math tutoring, fewer sleepovers. You should see how many posts there are defending sleepovers. More weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less television, more creating, less chilling, more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. By the way, again, most of this used to be standard conservative critique of the culture. He continues, most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grew up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. Now close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s, for even now, who raised their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. Why he has to go collectivistic there, and as if this, the competition with China is what should drive us, shouldn't what drives us is value creation? This can be our Sputnik moment, he goes on. We've awakened from slumber before and can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have cut out for us, rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing for or legislating alternative hiring practices onto existence. I'm confident we can do it. Now, there's a bunch of things that are wrong and bad about this quote, and so on. But it's, there's nothing wrong with jocks and prom queens. The problem is we don't have any respect for math Olympiad champions or valedictorians. We don't as a culture. And there's a lot wrong with our TV shows. They do wallow in mediocrity. They do wallow in cynicism and skepticism. And our culture is filled with average mediocrity. And the response to Vivek is just pathetic. It just basically confirmed how awful this has become. So, Cat Turd, the representative of MAGA, do I need to start listing American inventors that the world wouldn't have without us, against the world wouldn't have without us? Now, Vivek has a lame response to that, but I saw one good response where they actually list all those inventors, and a big, significant proportion of them are immigrants. It's just a reality. I mean, part of what made America great, part of what made America as productive in its culture, ambitious and striving, was its openness to immigrants. Another guy, Woodstock generation managed to build out aerospace. The one before went to the moon. America's doing great. Underlying your post is that we are all living in a squalor until being rescued by H-1B. Then why did anybody want to come here? I mean, where do you even start with this? The Woodstock generation built out aerospace. Was it the people at Woodstock? That generation, but maybe it was the more serious kids who were studying. And how many of, again, those people involved in the aerospace industry, how many of the people involved in NASA and taking us to the moon, how many people involved in rockets and that industry generally in the United States were immigrants? A huge proportion of them. And it just goes on and on and on and on in terms of, attacking. David Brooks, right, says, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers. This line from Ramaswamy is pure ignorance. You want to have your kids do something cognitively demanding? Send them to sleepover with a bunch of other 12-year-olds. I mean, what is the point? Right? So the attacks on him were unbelievable, and Elon then jumped in as well, and he came in defending H-1Bs, and then it really got ugly, and then everybody started attacking Elon, accusing him of being an immigrant, of course, and then Elon got angry, and he says, the reason I'm in America along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong is because of H-1B. Take a big step back and fuck yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. So Elon uses the F word on Twitter to tell MAGA to go fuck themselves. That imploded, right? Just imploded. Elon, how are we supposed to trust you with defense contracts when you publicly threaten millions of Americans? This is way scary, dude. And then it goes on, and let's see. So they attack him. So then Elon takes a bunch of stuff. He goes off and he takes off their verification, takes off their blue stickers, their gold stars, whatever it is. They're not allowed to monetize on the platform. Laura Luna, he takes away her status. All these things just get trashed, right? Of course, all of this is, the people on the anti-H-1B side, Luna and Bannon, of course, but also, funnily enough, Nikki Haley comes out on the MAGA side against H-1Bs. Of course, J.D. Vance is famous for having said, quote, "We're done importing foreign labor. We're going to fight for American citizens and their good jobs and their good wages." Sounds just like a leftist to me. Old style kind of Marxist leftist. So that all, the attacks and all of this happened. But what was the defense? And this is, I think, going to be this is crucial. What was the defense that Elon Musk and the others basically mounted? They basically said, look, the United States is not producing enough high quality engineers. Therefore, we need to bring in engineers from other countries. In other words, a completely pragmatic, utilitarian argument about the benefits. Elon Musk then came out and said, look, and almost apologetically said, look, I'm only talking about the 0.1%, the really talented, the really freaky, smart people like Sriram Krishnan. I'm not talking about just average engineers. No, those should all go to Americans, obviously. So he immediately capitulated. We want the Albert Einsteins of the world. We don't just want good engineers. And we need immigrants because American culture is bad right now. That would be Vivek's argument. We need immigrants because we are competing with China, and China will eat our lunch if we don't get immigrants. We need immigrants because we only want the top 0.1%. 0.1%, not the top 1%. 0.1%. They even got allies. Alex Jones came out in support of the pro-H-1B people because it was so unprincipled. So what happened is that, Elon, the whole argument, all the supporters, almost all the supporters, all based it on completely pragmatic grounds, completely utilitarian grounds, and then caved and said, oh no, we're only talking about the top, the very top. Now this, of course, is weak and suggests that they can't win. As a consequence, I think, of that, Trump came out supporting Musk. He had a funny statement about, oh, in my properties, we hire lots of H-1B people. Well, not the same H-1B that they're talking about, not the tech guys. H-1B, it's a different H-1B program for hospitality industry. His wife, of course, Melania, came in on an H-1B3, which is a special H-1B for models. It just shows you the kind of central planning that's involved in the whole H-1B process. They have H-1Bs for this kind of talent and that kind of talent, and the kind of H-2B. Yeah, his workers on H-2Bs, not H-1Bs. His wife was an H-1B3 or H-3B. Oh, I don't know. But here's the point: the government has all these different programs that are supposed to bring in different groups that are supposed to be special by some standard of being special. And then that's what Elon wants. He wants more of that, right? We should have a government committee that gets to decide who qualifies as the top 0.1% who will be allowed in. So we need central planning to decide what professions, who's smart enough. I gave you the example in a previous show. I gave the example of the CEO of NVIDIA, who came in, one of the most successful companies in modern American history, who came in as a kid, whose parents came in, and none of them were in the top 0.1%. None of them. NVIDIA. Keep at me. It takes me a long time, but I do learn ultimately how to pronounce things. So Trump has come out in supporting of Elon. He basically, they're okay with identifying the top 0.1%. They want the government to be involved and responsible for all this. Only top talent will be allowed in. Elon also came out in the last couple of days saying, look, one way to guarantee only the very top talent is come in is have a very high minimum wage. Right now, I think the minimum wage for H-1B recipients is $60,000. Double that, make it 120, make it 300,000 or whatever. That way you guarantee that you're only bringing in the very top people, right? And make the person who gets the H-1B pay a fee every year while they have the H-1B. This is so bad. So here's the thing. Both sides, MAGA and the Musk Vivek, are so bad about this. Other human beings are bad for you, unless they're in the top 0.1%, and we can fight China better with them. Now, I'll talk more about this tomorrow, but most of the Indians who are in the United States as immigrants who've done phenomenally well are not in tech. They're in they bought hotels and restaurants and all kinds of, small businesses. If you go into the poor areas in the United States, the entrepreneurs, the shop owners are often immigrants who've come here. Even if the population in those neighborhoods are not immigrants. Immigrants are overwhelmingly entrepreneurial. and in all kinds of fields. Do we only need tech? Do we emphasize tech because we're afraid of China? Should our immigration policy be based on being afraid of China? I mean, even Elon and the others have a zero-sum mentality when it comes to 99.9% of humanity. Only the 0.1% actually add value to all of your lives. So what we have here is a bunch of xenophobic racists and Marxist zero-sum world advocates, MAGA, versus a bunch of pragmatic, selling out, unprincipled tech guys who won't stand for the principle of immigration. At some point, Elon Musk tweeted something like, you know, anybody who wants to work for a living and embrace the American way of life or something else should be allowed in. And then he completely backtracked from that. And his discussion the last couple of days is completely backtracked to that. I think he needed to do that in order to regain, like, his position within MAGA and regain Trump. So we've got tech pragmatists versus Marxist, what do you call it? You got tech pragmatists versus woke right versus woke left. Those are the choices left to you. Egalitarians of the left, or you know, xenophobes of the right, with the tech guys trying to somehow survive with pragmatism. And it's sad. It's sad because what we need is a principled defense of, let's call it, productive immigration. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Right? Okay. So that's where we are in the Civil War. It seems like there's a truce right now. We haven't really seen the full, you know, the next battle from between Make America Healthy Again and the Ozempic wing of MAGA, or the tech guys. There's going to be a whole bunch of battles within MAGA between the different factions. You know, if you had to choose, you'd go with the tech guys. Suddenly, the tech guys are healthier than a bunch of losers in their mother's basement. You know, writing about how smart they are, and they're not getting jobs because of H-1B. Allow me to be skeptical about that fact, about how smart they are and about how they're not getting jobs. So, you know, tomorrow we will talk about the immigration facts. We'll talk about the mythology, the fact, and we'll talk about solutions. H-1B is not a good system. It locks people up into one company. You get an H-1B, you can't leave that company. You know, unless you're sponsored for an H-1B by another company. It's very complicated. It's very cumbersome. It's based on a lottery system rather than a merit system. It's based on lottery. So H-1B needs to be reformed. It needs to be better. It needs to be done away with. But what should replace it? We'll talk about that tomorrow. If you want to ask questions, Super Chat is open. I see no $20 questions. That's unusual. A lot of $5, $10 questions. Again, people saving money for the big show in 2 days. All right. Let's jump into the second topic. Let me just say, I predict many battles within MAGA. A lot of them along the lines of the pragmatists versus the brain dead MAGA crowd, the conspiracy theory know-nothings. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And Trump kind of trying to play it both, he's a pragmatist in the end, doesn't believe in anything, but doing it in a way that appeases MAGA so that he doesn't lose them. I've seen a lot of people say Trump doesn't care. He can't run again, so why would he care? He cares because he wants to dominate the Republican Party whether he runs again or not. He wants to determine the next Republican candidate. He wants his orientation to be the dominant orientation moving into the future. And who knows, he might want his son to be the next president or president in the future at some point. All right, so let's look at this filing that Donald Trump made to the Supreme Court, trying to, and again, I have no comment on the constitutionality of this or whether this is legit. It seems, I'm very skeptical about it in terms of just, I've never seen anything like it. It doesn't seem right, but I don't know. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the court rules on this. So this is a request by Donald Trump to have the U.S. Supreme Court delay its decision about whether to rule that the law that basically bans TikTok or forces it to sell is constitutional. And of course, TikTok is suing based on free speech. And Trump is stepping in and saying, you should delay this. And you should let me decide, me being Donald Trump. You should let Trump decide. So here's what he writes, and this is so Trump, so over the top, so ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I think the law is wrong and unconstitutional. I mean, the government would write a law to shut down one company and to pretend it's national security. It's not really. I don't think it's right. But, but there are a lot of people out there who think, including smart people, who think TikTok is a real danger to the United States, given its Chinese origins. Here's what Trump says. On January 20th, 2025, President Trump will assume responsibility for the United States national security, foreign policy, and other vital executive functions. This case presents an unprecedented, novel, and difficult tension between free speech rights on the one side, and foreign policy and national security concerns on the other. I don't know what those national security and foreign policy concerns are. As the incoming chief executive, President Trump has a particularly powerful interest in and responsibility for those national security and foreign policy questions. And he is the right constitutional actor to resolve the dispute through political means. Now, Congress has passed a law signed by President Biden. What role constitutionally does the incoming president have in the process there? As far as I can tell, the Constitution gives him no role, right? The law goes in. He can always get Congress or encourage Congress to pass a opposite law, a law to reinstate TikTok, and he can sign off on that. That he can do. But the law was passed by Congress, bipartisan, by the way, and signed by Biden, the president at the time. I don't see how he is the right constitutional actor. And the issue of free speech is a constitutional legal issue that the Supreme Court has to decide. It's not up to Trump to decide these things. He doesn't get to decide on issues about whether the law is constitutional or not. I mean, he can by vetoing it if he thinks it's unconstitutional, but it's not up to him. It was up to Biden. This is where it gets funny. President Trump also has a unique interest in the First Amendment issues raised in this case. Of course, I mean, Trump is, we know, a huge defender of the First Amendment. I'm kidding. Though through his historic victory, on November 5th, 2024, President Trump received a powerful electoral mandate. He won by a very small margin from American voters to protect the free speech rights of all Americans. That's true, but that's true of every president, including the 170 million Americans who use TikTok. President Trump is uniquely situated to vindicate those interests because, quote, the president and vice president of the United States are the only elected officials who represent all voters in the nation. That's, he's quoting a Supreme Court Andreessen versus Salbrezo decision from 1983. This is great. Moreover, President Trump, and this is true, is one of the most powerful, prolific, and influential users of social media in history. Consistent with his commanding presence in this area, President Trump currently has 14.7 million followers on TikTok, with whom he actively communicates, allowing him to evaluate TikTok's importance as a unique medium for freedom of expression, including core political speech. Indeed, President Trump and his rival both used TikTok to connect with voters during the recent presidential election campaign, with President Trump doing so much more effectively. Now, what legal point is being made there by him mentioning the fact that he was more effective on TikTok than Joe Biden? I mean, it's pretty hysterical how he can't stop. He cannot stop tooting his own horn, presenting himself as, let's see, further, and this is really funny. Further, President Trump is the founder of another resoundingly successful social media platform, Truth Social. Resoundingly successful. It has one poster, Donald Trump, and a bunch of users who just go to watch his tweets. Resoundingly successful. A resounding failure. It loses unbelievable quantities of money every year. Every month, never mind every year. Resoundingly. President Trump is the founder of another resoundingly successful social media platform, Truth Social. This gives him an in-depth perspective on the extraordinary government power attempted to be exercised in this case. The power of the federal government to effectively shut down a social media platform favored by tens of millions of Americans based in large part on concerns about disfavored content on that platform. President Trump is keenly aware of the historical dangers presented by such a precedent. We should quote him back on this when he attacks media. For example, shortly after the act was passed, Brazil banned the social media platform X for more than a month. Okay. In light of these interests, including, most importantly, his overarching responsibility for the United States national security and foreign policy, President Trump opposes banning TikTok in the United States at this juncture and seeks the ability to resolve the issue at hand through political means once he takes office. So I guess he's really calling for the Supreme Court to reject the law. He's not exactly telling us why. I guess on free speech grounds. But he isn't really making a free speech argument. Because then he goes on. It's another one of those funny, really funny paragraphs. Furthermore, President Trump alone, in the entire universe, possesses the consummate deal-making expertise, the electoral mandate, and the political will to negotiate a resolution to save the platform while addressing the national security concerns expressed by the government, concerns which President Trump himself has acknowledged. Indeed, President Trump's first term was highlighted by a series of political triumphs achieved through historic deals, and he has a great prospect of success in this latest national security and foreign policy endeavor. So he's asking for an extension for deal-making as well. So he says, President Trump, therefore, has a compelling interest as the incoming embodiment of the executive branch in seeing the statutory deadline stayed to allow his incoming administration the opportunity to seek a negotiated resolution of these questions. If successful, such a resolution would obviate the need for this court to decide the historical challenging First Amendment question presented here on the current highly expedited basis. So Trump is basically asking for for the court to basically hold off, not to make a decision, to allow him to find a deal. Although I think the law says that TikTok has to be sold, so I'm not sure what the deal, how you structure a deal. In the continuation of his argument, he says, President Trump takes no position on the merits of the disputes. He's not arguing against for First Amendment over national security. He wants a chance to get in there, to negotiate. I don't see how, on what grounds this can be done. Now, Trump did raise this issue when he was president about TikTok. He wanted to ban TikTok. He wanted to get TikTok sold. There was some deal arranged where, TikTok the servers of TikTok America were put into place on Oracle servers or something like that. Obviously, that wasn't very successful. So his great deal making did not save the company, did not save this issue, which, again, both Republicans and Democrats are concerned about. It's just him just being Donald Trump, I guess. This is what people love. Pretty amazing. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm fascinated to see what the Supreme Court actually decides with regard to that. What do they give it to Trump, and do they basically let him make a decision? I don't see on what basis. I don't see what the constitutional grounds are. It just seems bizarre to me. All right, that is the content for today, December 29th. We will now shift to your Super Chat questions. And as I mentioned, tomorrow we will go in depth into the actual issue of immigration. 6 p.m. East Coast time. We'll cover immigration from every angle possible. All right. Andrew says, are the Christian nationalists still organizing themselves? Is the future battle on the right the battle of the nationalist pragmatists versus the Christian nationalists? And how do we envision that playing out? Yeah, I mean, the Christian nationalists are certainly still organizing themselves. They are emboldened by not only J.D. Vance, who has declared himself a Christian nationalist, but also the guy who Trump has appointed to be defense secretary is clearly a Christian nationalist, has written books about it, and others within who've been appointed are all kind of Christian nationalist advocates. I think the battle is between them and kind of the pragmatic wing of the Republican Party, or the pragmatic / anti-woke left part of the Republican Party that is not buying into Christian nationalism as an alternative to woke left. They just don't like woke left, so they voted Republican. The Christian nationalists include under their banner the various xenophobes and racists and nationalists of all flavor that exist in the country. The national conservatives are definitely part of this Christian nationalist movement, but so are the integralists, which J.D. Vance is a huge supporter of. These Christian nationalists, as I've showed you and predicted for years now, are growing in influence. Do you know what the cover of The Economist magazine was? The cover of Economist magazine this week is The New Theists. And the whole thing is, how come all these intellectuals are discovering Christianity, discovering religion? Again, exactly what Leonard Peikoff predicted in DIM, exactly what I've been warning you about for years now. You know, the MAGA is this disorganized, unintellectual kind of grouping of people that will be taken over by the more intellectual elements. And the more intellectual elements are all Christian nationalists. On the other hand, people like Elon Musk are not Christian nationalists, but they can't fight the Christian nationalists. They have no base from which to fight them. No base from which to fight them. Basically, you know, Elon Musk has no philosophy, has no ideology. You know, if you saw his interview with, I think it was Jordan Peterson, or where he, you know, no, it was, well, I can't remember who he was interviewed with. I can see the stage. I can't remember who the interviewer was. But he's asked about God, and he kind of gives this wish-washy, but, you know, like I think, like many, he considers himself a Christian, you know, a cultural Christian. A cultural Christian. And if you're a cultural Christian, you're not going to be able to fight Christian nationalism. If you're a pragmatist, you can't find people who actually have principles and actually have values and actually know what they want, which the Christian nationalists do. And this is why Elon Musk has folded so quickly on the H-1B issue. It's because he can't stand up to the more principled opponents unless he goes all in on immigration, and he's not willing to do that because he fears losing political power if he does. And he's also not sure. He doesn't know that he actually supports that. He doesn't have a principle. So in a battle between pragmatists and principled people, the principled people always win. And this is why the Republican Party will become more and more and more Christian nationalist. And Trump is not a Christian nationalist, but Trump will become irrelevant very quickly here. The people around Trump, the intellectuals around Trump, the intellectuals that have hitched their bandwagon to MAGA and are going to shape MAGA, are the people who will have real influence over the long run. And, you know, Trump's pragmatism, put your finger into the wind and figure out what the people want, that'll fade, and MAGA and the rest of the Republican Party will be shaped in the image of, you know, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is the real influence there. He's the guy shaping things in the background. And you can see he says something and MAGA goes nuts. MAGA goes nuts in support of him. Right? There you go. You notice that the idiots on the chat who are, quote, criticizing me have nothing actually to say. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just in a dream. He's just this. He's just that. He's in an echo chamber. He's just this. He's just that. No actual argument. Not a single one. Not one. Not a positive perspective. Not this is what it actually is. Not this is how the world is. No, just, you know, stupidity. Just stupidity. All right. Yeah, I think it's clearly, I think it is clearly an issue of, it clearly is an issue of the Christian nationalists, the national conservatives, as I've been following them for years now. All of those guys, those people are going to win. I don't see how they can't win. Trump fired Steve Bannon a long time ago, but he has a podcast which is unbelievably influential within MAGA. So I don't know. And he talks to Trump. He talked to Trump all the time. He talked to Trump on January 6th or 5th, the day before January 6th. So he is hugely influential within the circle around Trump, and he's probably influential on Trump. So he has been the voice of MAGA for a long time, and he continues to be so. Continues to be so. All right, Michael. Is Boeing no longer a safe aircraft? Have egalitarians destroyed it? You know, I fly on Boeing airplanes all the time, right? All of us do. I mean, how many airplanes, basically 50% of all the airplanes out there in the sky are Boeing airplanes. Now, in the United States, how many of those airplanes have caused a fatality over the last 30 years? Well, basically almost none. I mean, the track record of the aviation industry, particularly in the United States, and let's say in Western Europe, is unbelievably good. Right? Unbelievably good. So, yeah, Boeing's had trouble. It's had some quality problems. But, and, you know, some of this got away from it. Some of it, I don't think it's egalitarianism. I think it's other considerations. I think it's a lack of focus on engineering. They grew too big because they took over they became a military contractor. Most of their money, most of their profits starts coming in from the government as a military contractor, and they lose sight of of building airplanes. And you know, so yes, their quality suffered. And but in spite of that, we live in a golden age of flying. It's never been safer to fly. Never been safer to fly. And these airplanes are amazingly, you know, safe. So I wouldn't, you know, you can criticize Boeing, and it should be criticized. And obviously they've done some wrong things, and they've taken their eye off the ball. But you know, I wouldn't make that. I mean, flying is the safest means of transportation in the United States. And Meerkat, Gaza must be destroyed. I think it's slowly being destroyed, being flattened. And Meerkat says, if MAGA is so afraid of white replacement, why did they elect an orange man? P.S. Gaza must be destroyed because he's a white orange man. It's okay to be if you're a white orange man. Michael says, is the core of MAGA basically a Nazi movement? No, because I don't think MAGA has a coalesced agenda. It's a fragmented, emotionalistic movement that is primarily based on negativity. It has strong religious elements. It has strong elements of xenophobia and racism. But it is not structured around an ideology the way Nazism was. It hasn't coalesced around that kind of ideology, but it's right for that. That's the danger. The danger is it's seeking an integration, right? Nazism was an integration, and MAGA is completely fragmented, and it will coalesce. It will coalesce around a much more clear-cut, unequivocal agenda, which a vast majority of MAGA will support. It's not there yet. All right. Is MAGA too crazy for Trump in the long run? I think Trump in that sense is irrelevant. He's made MAGA possible. He's brought MAGA to the leadership position. But as MAGA gets taken over by these more principled ideologues who have ideas and have a vision, Christian nationalism, I think, in this case, he will become more and more irrelevant. And, Trump doesn't need them, right? Because he's won elections. So it really is a question of now, this is going to be an intellectual battle. Can the Christian nationalist intellectuals mold MAGA into a cohesive movement that supports their agenda? And I'd say, if I had to guess, I'd say yes. That's exactly what they're going to do. I mean, this M. Stone, I blocked him, and he keeps coming back. So he keeps coming up with new names and keeps coming up, and I block him, and he keeps coming back. And again, it's this phenomena of people who think I'm worthless, who think what I say is ridiculous and stupid and all of this stuff, and yet they want to be here. They want to be on the chat. It's really, 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 really important for them to be able to make stupid comments on the Yaron Brook Show chat, even though I'm irrelevant and don't make any difference and meaningless in the world and all of that. It's really funny. It's really funny to see the amount of energy they, engage with, that they exude, all in an attempt to disrupt a show that they think is insignificant and irrelevant anyway. And which is great. I love it. Maybe it means I'm not so irrelevant and insignificant. The more they keep coming, the more I must be doing something right. Drin, I think about 70% of MAGA are pro-legal and H-1B migration, though they do want a border wall. We can't lump them together with Twitter racists. I completely disagree. I think 70% of MAGA are anti-immigration, they're anti-legal immigration, they're anti-illegal immigration, they're anti-immigration as a principle. They're xenophobic. I've seen them. I'm not talking about Twitter racists. The only people who've ever booed me off a stage, tried to, I didn't get off the stage. The only people who've ever tried to boo me off a stage, other than Antifa physically, violently try to get me off a stage, were Republicans before 2006, because I raised the issue of immigration, said something positive about it, and they flipped out. I've never seen them. This was in Chicago in 2016, right before the election. They flipped out. And we're talking about 60, 50, 60, 70-year-olds. So no. My strong belief is that 70% of MAGA, if not 90% of MAGA, will say they're pro-immigration. But then when you actually get into the detail, the immigration they want is so puny, so small, so irrelevant. They're really anti-immigration. They're anti-legal immigration. Of course, they're anti-illegal, but they're anti-legal immigration of all forms. And H-1B is just one expression of that. They're massively anti-H-1B, by the way, because they've been told stories about it takes jobs away from, American tech people. I know others who've been booed at CPAC and other places, just treated horrifically by Republicans because they say good things about immigrants. So no, they're anti-immigrants. Or they're not anti-immigrants, they're xenophobe nativists. They're identitarians like the left. Just they disagree about which identity should be elevated. Frank says, a term I often hear from Palestinians is land grab. Could any of the land bought by Israelis have been unlawfully confiscated and sold illegally? Sure. I mean, I'm sure there was some land, and I know there was some land stolen by the Israeli government in the West Bank. There was some land where Arabs were forced off the land, and Israel took it over. The state of Israel owns most of the land in Israel, which is wrong, but of course that's true in the United States as well, particularly west of the Mississippi. So there you go. Somebody says, no, we reject indentured servitude. Yeah, I'm against H-1Bs, as you'll discover tomorrow if you listen to my immigration. I'm just for letting them in. If you find a job in the United States, come in. So don't give them H-1B visas. Give them generic work visas. They can come and work for anybody or start their own company for 5 years. Renewable. If you still have a job. So no, H-1B as a visa, as if MAGA cares about the wages of Indians who come here with H-1Bs, as if MAGA cares about whether they're indentured servants or not, as if MAGA cares about the well-being of these people. They don't care one iota. This whole idea that they're indentured servants because they can't leave the company, they don't give a damn about that. And if they did, they would say, okay, let's reform H-1B so that they can work for any American companies. They can leave the company that brought them in, which is easy enough to do. So I am all for getting rid of H-1B. I'm not a proponent of H-1B visas. I'm a proponent of generic, all-encompassing, anybody can find a job, work visas. And I will articulate exactly how that would work tomorrow. Shazbat, did you know that you have 2 live streams happening simultaneously? No, I didn't. Really? How is that happening? And do both have the same content? Yeah. Anne asks, how's the other chat? Is the other chat better? How do I have 2? Interesting. I am curious if, Shazbat, if you can let me know if it's basically the 2 shows. It's exact mirror image of the same thing. The first one is your September debate. Oh, it was released today. Oh, I see. Oh, God. All right. That was a screw up on either my end or Christian's end, somebody's end, in terms of doing it now when I had this show. It wasn't supposed to be on today. He was live premiering it. It was supposed to be live premiered later on a different day. Anyway, screwed up. Sorry about that. Eric, your thoughts on andreessen citing people being debanked. It isn't being done directly by government, but still clearly censorship. Shouldn't the government official in charge of this be in jail? Yes, absolutely. The whole debanking, which started under Obama, is a just horrific phenomena. I forget the name. It was called Operation. It'll come to me. I'm going to do a show on that. I've got to put aside to do a show on it because it really deserves really get into the details of all of it. But I'm glad Mark Andreessen is talking about it. It's 10 years late because this started in maybe 2012, maybe 2014, somewhere in that region under Obama, and then has been used by the government in a variety of different ways since then. It certainly reappeared under Biden. It's the same people running the government as Obama period. And it is a great, great evil. The whole phenomenon of debanking is really such a violation of rights. But it's what happens when you give government that much control over banking. What was it called? Does anybody remember what it was called? Anyway, I have talked about it in the past, but distant past, because in various ways I was affected by it. Jacob, I talked about it. You know why I talked about it? I talked about when we talked about crypto about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when Silvergate was shut down, was forced to shut down by Elizabeth Warren, and they were using the debanking against the crypto industry, So it is a really, really horrific phenomena. But again, it was started in the Obama administration, going after payday lenders and going after gun manufacturers and going after private colleges. Operation Choke Point. Thank you, Raw Beef. Operation Choke Point, it was called. And the one against crypto was called Operation Choke Point 2. And of course, in a more complicated way, it also relates to marijuana. And that's because marijuana is illegal on a federal basis and legal on a state basis. So banks, almost all banks are regulated federally. They can't bank marijuana businesses because it's illegal federally. But that is a little different. There's some reasonable reason to do it. But all the others are pure politics, purely going after businesses and industries you don't like. You don't like. Operation Choke Point. Thank you. Jacob, in-group preferences in hiring should be criticized. Blacks preferring blacks, white preferring whites, gays preferring gays. But people pointed to this for H-1B as a red herring. In my company, they have entire groups for racial or sexual minorities that pull people up the management ladder due to these innate characteristics. MAGA linking these two is a diversion tactic. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think, I think the idea that, you know, Indians coming in and only hiring Indians and stuff like that, that is not what's going on. That is not what's going on. I agree that preferences should be criticized. They should be allowed, though, right? They should be allowed. If that's how you want to compete, go for it. But it shouldn't be the government's business and who you hire and who you don't hire, and on what basis. But it should be criticized yet allowed. All right, last question. Andrew says, Vivek's tweet reminds me of Toohey's motive to destroy excellence by elevating mediocrity. Do you think Toohey was envious of Roark or just more broadly hated excellent achievement? Well, both. He's clearly envious. The broader point was he was envious of, hated and envious of achievement and set out to destroy achievement. And then specifically, he was envious of Roark as exemplar of that which he hated, of that which he resented and wanted to pull down. All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks to all the super chatters. I will see you all hopefully tomorrow. Again, a show dedicated completely to immigration and all the different challenges to immigration. I'll go through all of them. It will be at 6 p.m. East Coast time. So if you're interested in the immigration question, please join us then. And then, of course, December 31st at 1 p.m., we will have a big fundraising show. Our goal this year is to raise $15,000. $15,000 during the show. And we're off to a great start. So we've already got $2,100 raised through PayPal. And I'm looking forward to engaging with you on the show on the 31st. Okay, Andrew, one last question. Jon Legusamo, the actor playwright, spoke of how representation is so important that he only wants to see Latino parts. Isn't that severely misguided, concrete bound? Yes. It's very, this is the whole, you know, the kind of racist culture that we build around us, that you need people that look like you, doing things that look like you. And I think this is horrible. It's all over the left. And it turns out that it's all over the right as well. So Joshua was on the chat, sounds like a Marxist, and he needs an education about capitalism and about the win-win nature of profits. But anyway, that's for another time and another show. And he didn't ask a super chat question. So thank you, guys. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.